Did these really cause the cut-off? Hello, I'm HG Tudor. In the thumbnail and across your screen, you will see the pictures that were supposedly compiled by Thomas Markle Senior years ago in collaboration with the paparazzi, which purportedly led this one's wife to cut off her father. As you know, this incident has come under renewed scrutiny as a consequence of Thomas Markle Senior's recent ill health concerns and the hokey-cokey that has taken place with regard to the suggestion that this one's wife had attempted to send a letter to him, had sent an email to the wrong email address, that she'd been ringing around the various hospitals, and so on and so forth. Another Markle family drama played out in the media, and I have analysed what's been going on for you in parts passim. As a consequence of this back and forth, the root of the problem, namely the suggestion that Thomas Markle Senior's involvement with the paparazzi on the eve of the wedding so disgusted this one's wife that it caused her to cut him off, has become resurrected, with many people returning to that event and asking the question, did this behaviour really merit her cutting him off? And did it merit the 7 years of silence that have followed thereafter? Well, the fact is that whilst many people understandably believe that this is why this one's wife cut off her father, and they often think that it's a disproportionate response, the fact is they are wrong. It is commonly the case that people who are dealing with a narcissist find themselves in this situation. Namely, the narcissist loses their shit, goes into a tirade, attacks, sometimes physically, often verbally, an individual, and it seems to be over the smallest incident, a perceived slight, something inconsequential. She went absolutely bananas because I didn't move a mug from the dining table. Okay, I get it that she wants the house to be tidy, but did that really merit her ranting and raving at me and throwing the mug to the ground so that it shattered? I turned up 5 minutes late when we'd arranged to meet. I apologised. It was a consequence of the fact that I'd got stuck in traffic because there'd been a car accident. There was nothing I could do. And yet she sat there for a whole half hour ignoring me while I continually apologised and explained what had happened. I don't understand why I got cold-shouldered in that way. After all, it wasn't my fault and I apologised. I just don't get it. Understandably so, being on the receiving end of either the heated fury or cold fury, as I've provided for you in those two examples, is mystifying to the victim. Why has this person responded in such a way when, after all, it isn't the end of the world? Nobody's died. Nobody's livelihood has been terminated. Okay, there's a minor infraction. Why have they gone ballistic in response to it? The reason being is that it's not actually about the act itself, but it's what it represents that prompts the reaction. Accordingly, the fact that somebody has failed to do something threatens the narcissist's need for control, and thus heated ignited fury pours forth. It doesn't matter that it seems disproportionate to the victim. It's wholly justified from the perspective of the narcissist. Because when you threaten that narcissist's need for control, you are signalling that that narcissist doesn't matter. It's not about a mug being left behind or being 5 minutes late. No, that's the mistake that people honestly make, but it's still a mistake with regard to thinking that's what's troubling the narcissist. It isn't. At a subconscious level, the narcissist is being made to feel unimportant, insignificant, powerless, and weak. They are being thrust back to those formative moments when, as a child, they were subjected to a lack of control environment. And that's why the narcissism reacts in such a vitriolic and visceral fashion. Similarly, the fact that this one's wife reacted in the manner that she did in respect of the photos is a similar instance to the examples that I've given, but with a slight difference. What happened here was different from the examples because it prompted disengagement. So in the example that I gave you in relation to the mug and turning up 5 minutes late, the response of the narcissist was to engage in devaluing behaviour, which seemed entirely disproportionate. But as I've just explained, from the perspective of the narcissist, it is not. But with this one's wife, she didn't actually engage in any devaluing behaviour. What she did was she cut off her father. She severed the relationship with him. In the narcissistic dynamic language, she disengaged from him, which is a step much more serious and beyond that of devaluation. Therefore, why on earth is it that Mr. Markle, being photographed getting fitted for a suit, that he was there looking at pictures of his daughter online in an internet cafe, that he was looking at a book of images of Britain and trying to get healthier by being seen out and about doing a bit of power walking with some weights? How could that be so offensive that it merited disengagement? The answer is, it wasn't, because it wasn't about the pictures. The fact is that Thomas Markle Senior, at this point in time, posed two potential problems to this one's wife. The first, he had outlived his usefulness. Hitherto, he'd been extremely useful to her. He provided her with fuel. He provided her with character traits, and he provided her with significant residual benefits with regard to the payment of her education, the various favours that he'd undertaken for her, for instance, converting a room into a dark room, as she mentioned in one of her Instagram posts, the fact that he assisted her in relation to writing thank you notes, that he provided assistance with regard to getting her auditions and small parts and so forth. But then, because she landed Prince Harry, her father as a non-intimate secondary source didn't matter anymore. And the consequence of that was her narcissism said, you don't need him, therefore you can ditch him. Alongside that, there was a further reason why her narcissism deemed that it was time to jettison the relationship with her father. The fact was, he was problematic in another way which had two limbs to it. The first was, he simply didn't fit the image that she wanted to present to the outside world. She wanted to be seen as this glamorous, sophisticated, independent, feminist and empowered woman. Beautiful, elegant, smartly dressed, all of the trappings of the somaticism that you have come to know about her. Her father, overweight, not particularly well groomed, didn't fit that image. In short, he was viewed as an embarrassment. But the second limb of that presentational aspect was the fact that he knew so much about her, and therefore there was the potential that he could spill the beans about what she's really like. After all, he has known her all of her life. And, like any narcissist, she wanted to present a particular image to the outside world, and there was a substantial risk that her father potentially could undo that on two fronts. By his very appearance not fitting with the image that she wanted to portray, and also that he might reveal certain things, maybe in certain instances just through normal chit-chat, that could cause problems for her because it would demonstrate that she was not the sophisticated glamour puss that she wanted to portray to the outside world, that she wasn't the self-motivating, self-success-seeking individual that she wanted the world to see. Accordingly, at that point in time, Thomas Markle presented the following problems. 1. He'd outserved his usefulness. 2a, his appearance didn't fit with that of which this one's wife wanted to portray to the outside world. In short, she was embarrassed by him. 2b, he knew stuff that could potentially expose her and thus threaten the image that she wanted to portray. Therefore, her narcissism said this in the subconscious: get rid of him. Keep him away from the wedding. He is not to be there. You are to have nothing more to do with him. In order to legitimize this decision, which most people would see as cold-hearted and downright disgusting, after all, he is her father, the narcissism needed to select something to justify this step, and therefore it chose the supposed leak of the paparazzi pictures. For many, there's a disconnect. The pictures aren't that bad, and in some respect, you could interpret them as a father wanting to get to know the life that his daughter's about to embrace better. He's trying to get fitted for a smart suit. He's reading about her romance with Harry online. After all, he'd never met Harry, and never has. He wanted to learn more about Britain, and he wanted to get in shape. Many people would look at that and say, well, isn't that fair? Isn't that rather sweet of her father that he's showing such an interest? Why on earth would that cause her to cut off her connection to him? It's downright disgusting and doesn't make any sense. You're correct. It doesn't make any sense. But when you realise that is just the cover story, and that underneath the real reasons why she got rid of him was because he no longer served a purpose, that he was a threat to her need for control with regard to the fact that he didn't fit the image that she wanted to present, and he was also a threat to control because he potentially could expose her because he knew so much about her, then you realise that's the real reasons why she got rid of him. But the narcissism would never ever allow her to say that out loud, because that would then result in a threat to control over the very people she'd be talking to. It would mean that she would be hugely criticised. Hang on a second, you don't want anything to do with your dad because he's outserved his usefulness to you, you cold-hearted cow. What? You're embarrassed of your dad? That's disgusting. What? You're worried he'll expose you? Expose you in relation to what? What are you hiding? Naturally, her narcissism as a self-defense mechanism cannot allow her to tell you the real reason why she did as she did. So instead it convinces this one's wife that the reason why she no longer had a connection with her father was because of the leaking of these paparazzi pictures, which leads many people to then scratch their heads and think, that's a strange thing to cut your father off in relation to. They're not that bad. But once again, as a consequence of understanding the behaviour of the narcissist through my work, you realise that is just the excuse. That is just the cover story. There's something much more deep-seated that drove her to disengage from her father. And this is what regularly happens in relation to the behaviour of the narcissist. As you know, it's always about destination prime aims. And many of the things that the narcissist says and does is simply the cover story, sometimes appearing pretty legitimate, in other times seem downright ridiculous. But it's ultimately just the cover story for the narcissist to get to the prime aims. And it's the same with this one's wife. The claim that she cut off contact with her father because of the paparazzi pictures isn't the real reason. The real reason relates to the threats to control that he posed by virtue of his appearance and lifestyle and the knowledge that he had about her, And furthermore, he would no longer be useful with regard to the provision of residual benefits because he'd outserved his usefulness. Therefore, he was no longer contributing to the prime aims in a constructive way and was threatening the prime aims. Thus, because it's all about the prime aims, the narcissism decided he had to go, and the paparazzi pictures was simply the excuse that was offered. I'm H.G. Tudor. Thank you for listening.